Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Loya, the District Director for Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for today's grants webinar on arts and humanities funding opportunities. This is the fourth of our federal grants series in 2021 from our office, and there's a service of the Office of Congresswoman Escobar and her district office specifically for federal opportunity in a variety of sectors. If you haven't attended some of our past webinars, we're glad for you to join us for the first time. We've had three other ones. One was on grants.gov and a general overview of federal grants. The next one was on using data to support your applications, and that was done by the US Census. And then last month we did our third one on a more issue area sector, kind of like how we're doing a focus area with arts and humanities today. We did it on SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So very in the weeds with them, talking about improving applications for that. So also, if you have joined us in the past, it wasn't me leading these webinars, it was our prior grants representative, and we are in between folks, but we'll soon have a new person starting, so you'll be hearing from that individual soon. But I want to remind you that if you missed any of those past webinars and you want to go back and view them, that you can see them on Congresswoman Escobar's YouTube channel, or go to escobar.house.gov in our events area, and you can see links to the past sessions, and they're all usually like an hour-long session. So I also just want to introduce our panelists today, because really they're the stars of the show today, and I know you're excited to hear from them and learn more about their programs and availabilities. And today's meant to be interactive. There's a Q&A area at the bottom, so you can put your questions in the Q&A section. That way we'll be sure to see them. We'll try to answer them all verbally as well, but you may see the answers in the chat, in the Q&A chat area as well. So I'll introduce everybody, and then we will kick it off one by one. So first of all, I want to introduce Ben Kessler, Director of Congressional Affairs with the National Endowment for the Arts. Thanks for joining us, Ben. And then we have Meg Ferris McReynolds, who is the Senior Program Officer in the Office of Federal and State Partnership for the National Endowment for the Humanities. And finally, we also have Marco Buentello, who's the Assistant Director of Grants with Humanities Texas. So we're very thankful for each of you for making time to be with us today. And now we are going to pass it over to Ben to kick us off. Thank you so much, Ben.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. And I think we're just gonna share some slides if we could. Perfect. And if you don't mind, that's just a little intro slide. If we could go to the next one, please. Thank you so much. So the goal for today is not just to provide a real deep dive into NEA funding opportunities, but really, I hope to demystify the National Endowment for the Arts and our application process. And I want everyone to leave this meeting knowing that an NEA grant is truly within your reach, and that you have the technical assistance tools that you need when it's time to apply with us. And please, this is the beginning of a conversation. I know from whether it's school or workplace settings, there's that moment where you leave a meeting and you say, I wish I had just asked that question. Please don't have that thought. We'll always be available. Get in touch with the Congresswoman's office. Get in touch with me directly at kesslerb@arts.gov, and we'll make sure our contact information is available. And just really be in touch. We want to make sure you're in a position to succeed when it's time to apply with the NEA. Just the next slide, please. So we're really always working to make sure NEA funding reaches a broad constituency, including organizations that serve populations traditionally underserved by government, organizations with small and medium-sized budgets, organizations from rural to urban communities, and of course, organizations that may be applying for federal support through the Arts Endowment for the first time. And I'll get to specific programs shortly. Just want to really stress our approach to inclusivity that you see on the slide here. We really want your applications. If you're thinking you won't apply maybe because you're intimidated by the matching requirement, and we'll get to what that means in just a little bit, get in touch with us. We never want you to have that kind of barrier to entry. We want to work with you. Things like language access. We released guidelines and technical assistance tools and held meetings in Spanish for the first time in our agency's history. And we're really exploring how we can do more of that and to ensure our resources are available to everyone. And along the way, you'll see some examples of organizations in your communities in the Congresswoman district who've received NEA grants recently in the last year or two. Just the next slide, please. Great, thank you so much. So our funding supports arts projects. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the types of organizations that are eligible to apply for funding based on both our authorizing language from Congress and our current guidelines. Eligibility is open to tax-exempt organizations, including 501c3 nonprofits, units of state or local government, including local arts agencies and educational institutions, and federally recognized tribal communities or tribes. On the right side of the screen, you'll see examples of things that we're not able to fund, which includes general operating support. You may have heard of general operating support more recently of what we were able to fund through the American Rescue Plan and really with the Congresswoman's leadership. And more recently, a waiver that allowed the agency to cover general operating support just based on the reality of arts organizations during COVID, mindful of the fact that arts organizations weren't necessarily engaged in programming, and what was front of mind was keeping the doors open, keeping people on payroll, paying rent, paying mortgage, but going forward, we'll transition back to just programmatic support. So something to keep in mind. We're also not able to fund individual artists, and that's with the exception of our literary fellowships and our 2 honorific programs, which are Heritage Fellowships and Jazz Masters. If you're not familiar with Heritage Fellowship and Jazz Masters, absolutely encourage you to take a look, and we always are eager to receive nominations from the public for those 2 programs. We're also not able to fund commercial activities and fiscal sponsors. And for a full list of what we are and are not able to fund, check out our website at arts.gov. And certainly when we get into the specific programs, always be on the lookout for those guidelines. Just the next slide, please. Thank you. So there are certain requirements that you must meet in order to be eligible for an NEA grant. You have to be a nonprofit at the time of application. So that's a federally registered 501c3 or the units of government. You must have a 3-year history of arts programming. You must be in compliance with reporting requirements for previous NEA awards if you were a grant recipient in the past. And you must provide a 1-to-1 cost share match of non-federal funds. The match can be achieved in a variety of ways, including earned income through ticket sales or in-kind donations of space, or the match can be a combination of these factors. And again, we understand that if this is your first time applying for federal funds or even not, you might think that I'm not going to apply because I don't think I can get a match. Please get in touch with us. We never want this to be a sticking point when you're thinking about applying. And just the next slide, please. Thank you. So our grant review process includes 3 levels of review. The first level of review is a citizen panel, which is made up of experts in the field. And for some grant programs, 1 layperson or a person not working directly in the arts. All of our panels are diverse in terms of geography, gender, ethnicity, and expertise. Panel recommendations are then submitted to the National Council on the Arts for their review and approval. The council then forwards its recommendation to the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, and the chairman provides currently her final review and approval. If you're interested in being part of this process, we're truly always looking for new panelists. My colleagues in the different disciplines would be really glad if I came through for some new panelists for them. And we'll talk a bit more about how to volunteer, but it's so important in terms of having a diverse viewpoints. So would really love to see some of the Congresswoman's constituents participating on our panels. And one other comment on our process, panel feedback is always available to applicants. If you apply and are not recommended for a grant, we encourage you to reach out to discipline-specific staff and request panel feedback. In my experience and from hearing from my colleagues, it can really be helpful to hear which parts of your application resonated with panelists and what things they might have had questions or concerns about. And just the next slide, please. Thank you. So there are different funding categories offered by the NEA. Partnership agreements are only available to designated state arts agencies and 6 U.S. regional arts organizations. NEA has funding opportunities for organizations that include grants for arts projects, Challenge America, Our Town, and research grants. These are the largest grants we offer, and nonprofit organizations receive the bulk of our direct funding. Grants for individuals are limited again to literature fellowships that I mentioned, and through our recognition to jazz artists, that's Jazz Masters, and folk and traditional arts through our National Heritage Fellowship Program. And again, if you're not familiar with those programs, please check them out. It's really just great content if you're interested in any of those specific disciplines, and we really do want to hear from the public about potential nominees. And generally you can submit 1 application per year. A little different with relief funding, where you could apply if you've applied for American Rescue Plan funding already this year. That limitation is not in place, but generally speaking, you can only submit 1 application per year, but just check out our guidelines or be in touch if you have any questions. And my apologies, just the next slide now, please. Thank you so much. So you'll see here on the map that NEA offers partnership agreement grants to 50 designated state arts agencies, 6 territories, and 6 regional arts organizations. The color coding on the map aligns with each state and its regional arts organization. By law, NEA funds 40% of NEA's grant funds are designated for the state arts agencies and regional arts organizations. And by supporting the state arts agencies and regional arts organizations through partnership agreements, the Arts Endowment makes the arts available in many more communities than we could really do at the federal level. We're mindful of the fact that it's folks closest to their own communities, to the arts organizations who understand the need in the field. So please be mindful of the fact that you could apply through us at the federal level, through the regional arts organizations or your state arts agency in Texas, and just check out what those guidelines are. States have different requirements based on where you can apply, but generally speaking, at the federal level, we ask that you apply broadly and make sure that you're in a position to succeed to receive federal dollars. Just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. I mentioned that 3 of our primary funding programs for arts organizations are Challenge America, Grants for Arts Projects, and Our Town, and I'll walk through a little bit about the specifics. Those months there are generally where we think that these programs will be made available. I'd look out for guidelines for Grants for Arts Projects coming in December for that February deadline. Emily, did you have something there? I wasn't sure as you popped up.
No, just some tech issues. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry there. So and the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So Challenge America primarily supports small organizations to extend the reach of the arts to populations that are traditionally underserved by government. All grantees must address how their organizations or audiences have been underserved. This is defined by our legislation and the National Endowment for the Arts and agency policy, and refers to those opportunities to experience the arts are limited by geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. All awards are $10,000 and do require a 1-to-1 match. And really, we think of this program as a great entry point into federal funding and funding with the NEA. If your organization fits those requirements and you haven't applied with the NEA or even at the federal government at all, we really think of this again as a great entry point and something that might make sense for your organization. Just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So the Our Town program provides support for creative placemaking projects. So of course, the next question is, what is creative placemaking? The most simple definition is about strengthening local communities through arts and culture. Creative placemaking is when arts, culture, and design activities are deliberately integrated into efforts to strengthen communities. And successful Our Town projects ultimately lay the groundwork for systemic change that sustain the integration of arts, culture, and design into local strategies. There are additional requirements for Our Town program. Eligibility does require a partnership between a nonprofit and local government, as you'll see there on this slide. But if you have any questions about the Our Town program, our director truly is remarkable in her commitment to this particular issue. And so if you do have questions, please get in touch and happy to connect you there. And just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So just now let's look at really what is the largest funding stream made available by the NEA, Grants for Arts Projects, or GAP as it's sometimes referred to. Applications are submitted to one of 15 discipline programs, usually either in February or July. Funding is available for all stages of the artistic process. That can include creation, presentation, and exhibition, arts education and enrichment, as well as services to the field, such as conferences or professional development. And all grants, again, do require a 1-to-1 match. And I'll just reiterate one more time, do not hesitate to apply because you're worried about the match. Please get in touch with us instead. And awards range from $10,000 to $100,000, and the project timeline can be up to 2 years. So that might make sense if you're a smaller organization, but you want to apply for a little bit more. Think about how you could spread it over the course of 2 years, and it might work better for your organization. And just the next slide, please. Thank you. So we support projects in Grants for Arts Projects across 15 different disciplines. You'll see those across the screen now, and guidelines for each discipline will be posted on our website when appropriate. To apply, you would choose the appropriate discipline based on the content of your project and follow the guidelines and the application instructions for that discipline. And we encourage you to look through discipline-specific guidelines and reach out to staff with any questions. And certainly feel free to reach out to the Congresswoman staff and they'll get in touch with me. And it should be really easy. We think about what discipline might make sense for you and we get you connected to the discipline-specific specialist at the NEA. And for some organizations in the meeting now or listening later, you might think about why fall into 2 or even 3 disciplines. that's when we really want to hear from you and work with you to make sure your application is the strongest, so we get you focused on the right discipline where, again, my colleagues will be able to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position to succeed. And just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So really amazing that you already they made available through the Congresswoman staff about grants.gov. Certainly not an easy process to navigate, and it's so wonderful that you have that resource. We want to help to the extent that we can too, because whichever program you decide to apply for through us, the process is the same, and it will have two parts. Part one is where you work with the two federal government systems, System for Award Management, or SAM, and grants.gov, and you will need up-to-date registrations and the correct permissions through these systems to apply for funding. And as you heard at the beginning of the meeting, this is throughout the federal government, and we're limited on our ability to work on the back end, but we want to make sure that there's phone numbers there. And through my experience, really there is really great customer service when it comes to SAM and grants.gov. So I just see a question in the chat. I'll just pause for a second and the question is about reiterating how we should direct our questions regarding appropriate discipline for projects that might fall into multiple categories. So thank you, Carrie, for raising that. If you do have any questions, please get in touch with me. Again, I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now. And for those listening later, my email is kesslerb@arts.gov, B as in boy. And we make sure that you are in a position to succeed. We're mindful of the fact that organizations might straddle a few different artistic disciplines. You might have different programming. What we want to do is make sure that you focus on where your application might be the strongest. So reach out to me, reach out to the Congresswoman staff, and we'll make sure that you're in touch with discipline-specific folks who can be more helpful than I, of course. And just the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So part two is then really the meat and potatoes, the real substance of the Arts Endowment grant application. So it's where you'll submit the bulk of the work and the specifics about your project. You'll put together your project narrative, the budget, details on key personnel, and then work on any work samples that are appropriate. The grant application form is submitted through our Arts Endowment online platform, which is called the applicant portal. The guidelines for each of our funding programs, which are all will be posted on our website at arts.gov, include step-by-step instructions. So always be on the lookout, and we'll make sure to loop in the Congresswoman staff to make sure that you're aware of all different opportunities. And just the next slide, please. So we would love for you to stay connected with us at the National Endowment for the Arts. We release regular newsletters that highlight upcoming grant opportunities and deadlines, and many of my colleagues throughout different disciplines have their own newsletters. So take a look, go to arts.gov, subscribe to some, subscribe to all. We really do our best not to spam you, and we'd love to hear from you. And just the next slide, please. And again, just final reminder, and then I'll conclude. Sorry for taking up so much time and really bombarding everyone with information, but we really encourage you to participate and volunteer to serve on a panel. It's a great way to connect with us, to learn about the process and really see it from the other side. And we want to make sure that panels are filled with diverse representation from people across the country. And again, I would love to be able to report back to Emily and the Congresswoman staff that we have panels with the Congresswoman's constituents. So with that, I'll conclude, and looking forward to any questions and staying in touch with everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was a great presentation. And I do want to encourage folks, if you have other questions, feel free to chat or the Q&A. And we'll, as Ben did, we'll answer them throughout. And we'll also leave some time at the end for any final questions. But moving on, I now want to pass the mic to Meg Ferris McReynolds with the National Endowment for the Humanities. Go ahead.
Great, thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the National Endowment for the Humanities and how our grant programs might support your community and your work. Next slide, please. So today I'll offer a brief overview of what the NEH is and the types of work that we support, offer some suggestions to strengthen your applications, and highlight a few of our upcoming program deadlines. I'm also happy to answer your questions throughout and when we're finished. And you can also write to us at congressional@nih.gov, and I will put this in the chat later, and along with my personal email as well. And I'm happy to make any connections that you need. The National Endowment for the Humanities supports public and scholarly engagement with the humanities by making grants to nonprofit organizations and individuals. We are a federal agency established in 1965 and supported by taxpayer funds. Each year, the NEH awards around 750 competitive grants, ranging from $6,000 to $600,000. In fiscal year 2020, we made $132 million in regular awards, plus another $67 million in emergency coronavirus relief grants. We will also soon announce awards under the second coronavirus relief package, the American Rescue Plan, and I urge you all to be on the lookout for that announcement, which will show up on our website. Next slide, please. Thanks. Here at the NEH, we focus on the humanities, which is the public and scholarly study of human society and culture. Congress defined the humanities in our 1965 authorizing legislation, and you can find that full definition on the NEH website, which is www.nih.gov. The NEH supports the humanities across the country in several ways through our 7 programmatic divisions. We work to strengthen teaching and learning, facilitate vital research and writing in the humanities. We nurture public humanities programs. We fund libraries and museums that preserve and disseminate cultural resources. We encourage new technologies and methods for research in the humanities, and we support state and local engagement with the humanities. Next slide, please. I think the best way to understand the NEH's work is to learn about some of the projects that we support, both large and small. I wanted to start by highlighting a few of our more recent awards made in Texas, including in 2020, a scholar at Texas Christian University received a grant to prototype an online interactive game using the Oneida folklore to explore Oneida language, culture, and philosophy. And then a bit closer to home for you all, in 2019, the city of El Paso received a preservation assistance grant for the purchase of environmental monitoring equipment that will support the long-term preservation of the El Paso Museum of History's collections. Also in 2019, a little further afield, the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston received a challenge grant to help support the construction of multidisciplinary galleries within a new exhibition building for modern and contemporary art on the MFAH campus. Now you might wonder what types of projects NEH grants won't support. You'll find the full detailed information on our website, but in general, we don't support humanitarian work, even though our name sounds quite similar. We don't support the creative arts. That's Ben and his colleagues at the NEA. We don't make grants to students. We don't support political advocacy or policy studies, and we don't support science research or the quantitative social sciences. Next slide. As you think about potential projects, you'll need to make sure that you're eligible to apply. Again, you'll find the full information on our website, but generally we support US-based nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 status and as well as individuals, but just not students, as I mentioned previously. There are 38 competitive grants programs, which may be a bit overwhelming. So if you think, but here's a tip. So NEH is organized by audiences for grant products. So if you think about the audiences for your work or your project, you can then look to the appropriate division for funding and for opportunities. If your work serves the general public, for example, look to our division of public programs. If you're doing individual research and writing, look to the division of research programs. And if you're doing a large kind of fundraising project, you would look to our Office of Challenge Grants. Our website includes a page for each grant program. The most important piece of information on that page are our guidelines, which we call our Notice of Funding Opportunity. And this is where you'll find all of the information that you need to determine if you're eligible and also what you'll need to apply. I also have a few suggestions for you as you think about applying to the NEH or really to any funder. First, it's really important to plan ahead. Make sure that you understand the application process and what you'll need to apply. And I can't say this enough, but reach out to a program officer if you need help or if you have questions. Program officers at NEH will read drafts, typically for programs, and make sure that you read and understand the review criteria listed in our Notices of Funding Opportunity. Each grant opportunity has established criteria that our reviewers will use. And it's important to keep this in mind as you start to draft your application. Understand our review process. Applications to NEH go through peer review, much like at NEA, meaning folks like you will review your submission based on our established review criteria. Understand your audience. Your audience is both generalists and specialists, so it's important that your application address them both. Make your case. Make sure that you include, be clear about what you're going to accomplish and be as specific as possible. And then pay attention to the details. Make sure you include all of the required materials. At NEH, incomplete applications are not reviewed. So make sure that you go through a checklist and make sure you have everything that's required. Don't wait until the last minute, and be sure to please proofread. Know that our grant programs are competitive. Acceptance rates vary by program from about 8% to 20% of the applications we receive. Keeping the suggestions I just outlined in mind will help you prepare. But by no means do I want these numbers to scare you. I do, you won't receive a grant if you don't apply. So I would encourage you to just do your homework and read and make sure that you meet all the qualifications and apply. Next slide, please. So now that you know the basics of applying and what goes into a strong application, I'd like to share some of our upcoming deadlines that may be of interest. You can find all of these deadlines listed under the grants tab on the NEH website. So if you go to our NEH.gov, it's at the very top. First, I'd like to highlight the Public Scholars Program, which supports the creation of well-researched nonfiction books in the humanities for a general public audience. There's an upcoming deadline on December 15th for this program. Our ever popular media projects, which supports the development, production, and distribution of radio programs, podcasts, and documentary films, has an upcoming deadline in January, on January 12th, 2022. I also wanted to highlight our preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions, and this is the program that the City of El Paso came in under. This is a wonderful, really accessible program that helps small to mid-sized organizations improve their ability to preserve and care for their humanities collections. Grants for this program are accessible. They max out typically at $10,000, although right now there is an additional $5,000 available, making it $15,000 if your project is related to one of our current special initiatives called A More Perfect Union. The next deadline for this program is on January 13th, 2022. This is just a small sampling on this slide of the upcoming grant deadlines, and I hope you take some time to look through our website to see what funding opportunities might best fit your project. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I know I kind of ran through a lot really quickly, but here are just some key points that I really hope that you take home today. First, you can find everything about NEH, its programs and our grants on our website, www.neh.gov. Second, NEH grants are competitive, as I mentioned, but you won't get a grant if you don't apply. Carefully read our notice of funding opportunity, and I can't stress this enough. It has all of the information that you'll need, including eligibility, your review criteria, and all of the pieces that you'll need to make a successful application. And then finally, talk to NEH program officers. That's why we're all here, and we're really happy to answer your questions. You can write us or call us. We'll reply, and we certainly will do our best to help you in any way that we can. Next slide. Finally, I wanted to mention that in addition to all of our regular grant programs, the NEH is also preparing for the 250th anniversary of the United States independence in 2026 by funding projects under A More Perfect Union. This initiative promotes civic education and a deeper understanding of American history and culture. Applications to NEH programs do not need to respond to this initiative, but we are supporting a good deal of programming on these themes. You can find more information about A More Perfect Union and all of our special initiatives and any special events on our website. You'll also be able to access the digital version of Humanities Magazine, which is published quarterly and highlights grant-funded activity across the country. Next slide, please. Great. Last but certainly not least, I wanted to mention NEH's support of the network of state and jurisdictional humanities councils. And I'm so pleased that Marco from Humanities Texas is able to join us today. If you aren't already familiar with the work of the Humanities Councils, they are independent nonprofit organizations that are in each state and US jurisdiction that advance knowledge and understanding of the humanities increase public awareness of, access to, and support for the humanities. The councils play a critical role in supporting NEH's mission and goals at a local grassroots level. And I wanted to thank Humanities Texas for their ongoing partnership with us, for serving as excellent stewards of public funding. And we were particularly pleased to provide additional funding to Humanities Texas recently under a More Perfect Union for their traveling exhibits. They and their fellow humanities councils are also really important partners for NEH in our coronavirus relief funding. The councils as a whole received $51.6 million out of the agency's $135 million in American Rescue Plan funds. And that followed $30 million that the councils received from CARES Act funds out of $75 million. And again, I'm happy to address any questions, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Meg, for all that information. And thanks for highlighting some of the state and local funds that had recently been funded. And if you guys do have questions for Meg that come up in your mind as you hear, you might be thinking, well, maybe Marco's going to answer them. That's okay. We should have a few minutes at the end. So feel free, whatever you're comfortable with in the chat or the Q&A, to ask any questions, or if you're thinking about something as you're, ruminating on the info that Ben shared and you have a question, he's still on, so he can answer those too. So I am going to now pass over to Marco for his portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you, Meg. That was really nice, and it's really good to see you and see our partners in DC. I'm sorry I kept putting contact info in the chat. I meant to include my contact info. So there it is. There it is on screen. Hi, I'm Marco with Humanities Texas. One of the main takeaways I want to provide to you today is to please contact us. We have grants year-round, and we're really happy to help and happy to keep working with our constituents and our friends in El Paso. So first off, the NEH and NEA have an acronym, and we didn't want to be left behind. So we like to say we are HTX. So what is HTX? We're the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, as Meg explained. Every state has a humanities council, and we are it for Texas. We're a private nonprofit with headquarters in Austin, but we really have a statewide mission. We have a statewide board of directors, and I'm very happy to say that we have Associate Dean at the College of Liberal Arts at UTEP, Maurice Jayasuriya, is currently on our board, and she's also on our Grants Review Committee. And our mission is to promote lifelong learning in the humanities throughout Texas. As you'll soon find out, we specialize in supporting public programs about the humanities, educating the public about the humanities. Next slide, please, Abby. Thank you. So first, I just wanted to run down some of our core programs at Humanities Texas. So a lot of us know us by our teacher professional development programs that we hold throughout the year for public school teachers, our outstanding teaching awards for outstanding public school teachers throughout the state. We have our radio program, Texas Originals, a family reading program called Texas Storytime. We host Veterans Voices. We have our own public lectures and public programs. Before the pandemic, we held History Harvest, collecting local historical materials from families, local citizens. We've tried to tour that program throughout the state. And especially I wanted to emphasize our traveling exhibitions, which we offer for really good rates. We do not charge for the exhibitions, we charge for the shipping. Those exhibitions can cover everything from early Texas history to contemporary history and culture. And I would really recommend that you check those out on our website. And of course, I'll be talking about grants today. So I swear I am not showing off here, but we have really great friends and contacts in El Paso. And in the past year, we've had several HTX grants awarded in El Paso and the El Paso area. So before I really started talking about the grants program specifically, I wanted to show y'all some of the programs that we funded, maybe start some ideas going. So first off, recently we funded discussions by local artists put on by the Juntos Art Association. an online lecture series on local history by the Cultural Heritage Society of the Camino Real de Tierra Adentro. We have hosted a couple now film screenings and discussions by the Binational Independent Film Festival. Also digital exhibitions on local history by the organization Amor por Juárez, a digital guide for the Tom Lee Trail by the Tom Lee Institute, and a contemporary oral history program put on by UTEP, by the University of Texas at El Paso. So this is just a slice of the programs that we funded in El Paso to give you an idea of the kinds of programs that we fund. Like I said, we're very happy to serve El Paso, and we're very happy to continue serving El Paso. So if you have a similar program, if you have a brand new program that you want funded, please let us know. So what exactly are Humanities Texas grants? They are NEH subawards for nonprofit organizations that conduct humanities programs for the general public in Texas. So the NEH and NEA mentioned similar programs. This is really our bread and butter, is supporting public programs throughout the state. And I wanted to break that down. So the kinds of public programs that we might fund are lectures, discussions, exhibitions, conferences, workshops, and digital and media programming. So in the past, we have funded, history and culture podcasts. We have funded documentaries as well. And these can be in-person programs. As we're starting to recover from the pandemic, we're starting to see more in-person programs. These can be virtual programs as well. So the programs that we fund are grounded in the humanities. This can be history, culture, anthropology, archaeology, philosophy, art history, literature, languages, and other humanities topics and fields and studies. I'd like to say if you are an art organization and you're in between, you host art programs with some humanities components, I would ask you to please contact me directly and we can talk about your program and see if it is eligible. We of course get programs that are in between or that are both history, art history, humanities, arts, and the humanities. So similar to the other grants, our grants require one-to-one cost share. For example, if you're requesting $1,000, you must match with $1,000 or more. We do accept cash and in-kind cost share. And as I've said, I am happy to work with you on your budget, on your application, if you have any questions whatsoever about the cost share. So we offer two types of grants, mini grants and major grants, and I'm about to get into those now. So our mini grants are available throughout the year for funding up to $1,500. We have given grants of $100 for organizations that just needed some funds to promote their program online. For example, the maximum request is $1,500, but they're available throughout the year and decisions are made within 10 business days. These grants are supposed to be easy to apply to, easy to administrate, and with a quick turnaround time. We try to spread these funds out throughout the state as much as we can. We try to help first-time applicants who have never received funding or have never completed an application before. We help them out throughout the whole process to make sure that they are successful. We want to see your humanities programs and we want them to be successful as well. That is our mission. And most applicants are successful. Sorry, Abby. I would say about a 70% to 80% success rate with our mini grant program. And I'll just also state there is an asterisk there. They are available throughout the year. However, we ask for at least 4 weeks to 6 weeks lead time before the program takes place, just so that we're following proper guidelines. So you get a chance to promote the fact that you got an award. Next slide, Abby, thanks. So our major grants are available twice a year in the spring and the fall. The next major grant cycle is due on March 15th, 2022. We unfortunately just had the fall major grant cycle pass, but they're available twice a year, every year. The average award is roughly $5,000, although we have seen recent awards of $15,000. So these grants will support larger programs than we support with the mini grant. maybe a larger conference, maybe a digital or media production. And that is roughly what we award. It really depends on how competitive the cycle is, how many applications we received, and what kind of funding we have for that cycle. We get questions all the time about what funding is available at the moment. We cannot tell you until we have the major grant cycle, but we want to at least provide this information for you. So, sorry, could we go back to the last slide? So the board makes award decisions for these major grants about 2 months after submission. Not as quick turnaround time as the mini grants, but we are working with larger amount of funds. And we have 2 applications under the major grant program. So community projects for programs that I've listed before. So lectures, conferences, discussions, film screenings and discussions, anything like that. And media projects, which, as I've said, in the past, we funded documentaries, podcasts, online series, even television series. Next slide, please, Abby. So aside from just providing, information about who we are and our grants program, I just wanted to say that Humanities Texas is here to help you be successful. Our grant team works with applicants every single day. We get phone calls and emails every day about a new grant application, perhaps talking about a program that you're looking to fund in the future, workshopping what kind of program might be eligible. We love to hear from you, and we love to work with our constituents from all across the state. The administration and reporting for grants is also greatly supported by the staff. So if you've never applied for a grant because you feel like, oh, I wouldn't know what to do afterwards, how do I administrate it? What about, final reporting guidelines and everything? We guide you through the whole process. We are happy to help you with that process. Like I said, we receive a lot of first-time applicants. We see applications from very small organizations that maybe have 1 or 2 staff members and they've never done this before. We are really happy to work with you. So I've provided my contact information there. Please call me or email me. Se habla español. So if you primarily speak Spanish, or if you feel more comfortable speaking Spanish, please call me or email me directly, and I'd be happy to work with you. And my last slide, I believe, just had contact information, which I've shared in the chat. Oh, no, so this is important. So please check out our website. Our grants website has all the information. You can email our grants email, call us, and please subscribe to our newsletter. I did not include that information here, but our newsletter will remind you about upcoming grants and upcoming programs that we hold throughout the state.
That's great. Thank you so much, Marco. And I'm so glad each of you plugged that. We really invite folks to connect directly with your organizations as well. We do our best over here at the Congresswoman's office to keep you updated, and we're doing a monthly newsletter as well, but it is not nearly as in depth. It's just a little smattering of some of the highlights from our federal orgs. So thanks for the info in the chat, and I see Eric shared the link for Humanities Texas as well. I will give it just a moment more in case there are any other questions from our guests. And for our presenters, did anybody think of anything that they forgot to share, or just any final tidbits or thoughts that they would like to add in?
Just another word of thanks. And again, please get in touch with me directly, kesslerb@arts.gov, or always, whether it's the Congresswoman's district staff or staff in DC, and they'll make sure that you're connected with me, and we'll get you connected to the right person, discipline-specific person at the NEA. So thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thanks, Ben. And I really appreciate how everybody said, like, reach out to us. I think I used to work in the nonprofit field, and I remember feeling like I didn't realize from my end that I could work so actively throughout the year to talk with the funders and with the program officers to get more feedback. So people are really welcoming and here to help and want to see a great set of diverse applications. So please take them up on the offer. And thanks, Carrie, for your comment about just having the ability to have a personal conversation with the different orgs and keep these conversations going. Also, I think Meg, I was like talking and you were going to make a comment as well. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to reiterate what Ben said. Certainly reach out to us if you have any questions. We're all here. We may not be in our offices right now, but we are all connected. And I can say, as a program officer, my fellow program officers in the different divisions are really responsive. And generally, if you reach out to someone within a matter of hours, you'll have some sort of response. And you can certainly always connect to me or to our Congressional Affairs office, and then we can connect you to the relevant programmatic division. So since I work directly with our state and jurisdictional councils, our office doesn't make any competitive grants, but I can certainly make connections for you.
That's great. We appreciate that. And yeah, I think also, we would love to hear from you at the Office of Congresswoman Escobar. So if you have feedback for us, feel free to drop it in the chat, or if you think of other topics or interests that are federal in nature on the grant side that you'd like to see, feel free to drop me a line. I'll put it in the chat, but my email is emily.loya@mail.house.gov, and you're welcome to reach me there. And as I mentioned, you can view past grants webinars, especially the intro to federal grants. It goes into more depth. Ben shared about sam.gov and grants.gov on his slides, and there's a way more in-depth from one of the officers from grants.gov, a very in-depth webinar recorded on our Congresswoman's YouTube channel as well. So without, go ahead.
Yeah, that's an amazing resource, especially for folks who haven't applied for federal resources before. And just speaking as someone who fields these kinds of requests, the fact that the Congresswoman's staff has made that available to you. If you're not familiar with that application process, please take a look at it. It can be cumbersome. Share it with friends in your arts and humanities communities. And once guidelines are up, and I'm sure same with NEH, get started when those guidelines are up. If you haven't done it before, navigating the SAM and grants.gov process can be arduous. We want to make sure that you're not running into a problem of just, it was a technical issue, your internet went out, there was a, God forbid, a storm, something that made you lose power, whatever it might be. Get started. Really, the last thing we want you to do is get hung up because of a technical problem. So check out everything that the Congresswoman staff made available. And when guidelines are up, please get started as soon as you can.
Yeah, I know we all live in that. Like sometimes we don't start as soon as we should on things, but it is especially true when you're doing these larger federal grants and navigating a new system. So thank you all so much for your time and expertise, to Ben and Marco and Meg and Abby, who is behind the scenes running all our slides for us. And again, thank you, and reach out to our office. We're also available via phone at 915-541-1400 and the Congresswoman's website at escobar.house.gov. And we will see you in a future webinar soon, or maybe in person here in the district. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.